Up with groups like CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations, as well as the Southern Poverty Law Center, the NAACP, and others, to educate young people about biases they may not even know they have. And while the multi-approach campaign is designed to educate people of all colors and creeds, there are growing questions about the focus of a campaign that includes a documentary program dubbed, quote, the Untitled White Project. Joining me now, Ben Shapiro, who's editor-in-chief of Truth Revolt, and Robert Zimmerman, who's a Democratic strategist. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for being here. All right, Ben, so MTV wants folks to begin to de-bias themselves, and they have even come up with a 7-day racial bias cleanse that I gather CARE has helped them put together. And the theory behind this is what?
Well, I mean, the theory behind this is that we are all racists, and even if we don't know that we're racists, we are racists, and therefore we're going to need training from the mainstream media in how to become not racist. Presumably, after that racial bias cleanse, there will be a racial bias colonoscopy, which I think would be significantly more unpleasant. But at the end of this story, of course, the solution to all of our racism is to do whatever it is that the leftist folks over at MTV want us to do in order to assuage our self-esteem, and we can all confirm that we're not racist or bigots in any way by doing exactly what all of the leftists in the media want us to do. Namely, if we want to show that we're not misogynist, vote for Hillary Clinton. If we don't want to show that we're racist, then vote for Barack Obama, etc.
Ben,
go ahead, Robert.
Ben, isn't this the point of your soliloquy where you shout out live from New York? It's Saturday night? Because that type of rant indicates you're auditioning for the show. There's no basis in reality in what you said at all. It's almost pathetic or comical. The reality here is that the MTV campaign, which is also done in partnership with the Anti-Defamation League, internationally respected organization, and the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Discrimination, amongst many others, is really designed to speak to the needs of millennials, the 14 to 24-year-olds, who have done, and this is based upon extensive research, where 41% have felt that they are, in fact, feel bigotry in their own thoughts, and 63% in that study show they've been the victim of prejudice of one sort or another. And it's not the kind of prejudice we grew up with, where we saw fire hoses turned on protesters or dogs chasing protesters. It's subtle and painful prejudice people witness on the internet or in comments that are being made. It is a very innovative program. No one's forced to participate, but it has a great educational opportunity.
The thing is, though, Ben, you know, when I look at what the cleanse is going to offer to folks, it's activities like setting a counter-stereotypical image as the background on your phone. Ha-ha! That's it. That's it. And then you're no longer racist if you just put a person of another race as your background on your iPhone. And then there's consuming media that helps build empathy for people of other races. So no more All in the Family for anybody who fails their cleanse test.
That's a propaganda effort. I mean, the idea that this is not a propaganda effort and that it's not designed to change people's behavior and their thought processes is silly. And again, it is all based on the presumption that all sorts of Americans, especially young Americans, who, by the way, their own surveys show are not racist and don't have racist attitudes, it's designed to show them that they secretly are racist. And again, the only way in order for them to cleanse that racism, in order to exculpate themselves, is to do all of the things that the leftists at MTV would want them to do.
There's a
Wait, let him finish.
Yes, it's an opt-in program, but so what?
Ben, it's about building awareness. The Anti-Defamation League is not a leftist organization, and I think it's really unfair for you to characterize them as such. They've been pioneers in fighting anti-Semitism.
The NAACP, CARE? What do you make of their participation?
The point I'm making is simply that the idea of building awareness, helping young people confront bigotry so they can respond peacefully and logically when they face it, helping them become more sensitive to other people's needs, especially...
Okay, but let me ask you this, Robert. Let me ask you, because
yes.
One of the questions in there, you know, you saw we're all biased, we're all by this, we're bipartisan. Do you think there's going to be a little detector to see if there's an anti-conservative bias in here for the young people and try to cleanse them of that so they can be more, quote, bipartisan?
Megan, it's not about partisanship. It's not about conservative or liberal.
They're the ones who inject partisanship into their PSA.
No. In fact, the reality is the entire program, it really rises above the partisan rhetoric we're witnessing. And I think what's really important here is that if we don't to the voices of the 14 to 24-year-olds, we don't listen to the millennials and what they're saying, then we're tragically doomed to repeat the history of bigotry and prejudice that has really impacted our society. What about that, Ben? I mean,
is there any value to saying that there is some inherent bias, this sort of fear of difference, of something that seems other, and that it's valuable to sort of look at that and try to call attention to it so we can stop it.
How about combating actual acts of racism? How about singling out racism and then actually doing something about it, as opposed to doing this kind of Marxist newspeak in which we go through everybody's hidden actions? You know, I'm sensing a real sort of underlying, I don't know, racial bias to this whole segment. Robert, I find you to be racially biased. I find you to be insensitive, bigoted, and misogynist based on everything that you've said. It may be hidden. Maybe I can't detect it, but we all know it's there. So perhaps you should go through this program. At the end of the program, you will feel free. You'll feel better about yourself, and you'll feel more informed because after all,
it all comes down to your screensaver. If you you need to come up with a different screensaver and again, consume media that helps build empathy.
You know something?
You guys,
I think we could all learn from this program. And Ben, you've got a future writing for Stephen Colbert.
All right.
Hey, Ben.
Microphone. Is it up
Hi.
still?
So I was wondering, I watched a couple of your videos where you spoke at other universities, and I was wondering what you thought about the term that many feminists use, empowered women empower women. Considering that I watched a lot of your videos, and a significant portion of it had to do with criticizing safe spaces and trigger warnings, which a lot of people find empowering.
We'll do trigger warnings, and then we'll do, do you mind if I do microaggression instead of safe space? No. Okay. Several scholars have tried to, psychologists have tried to find evidence that they're effective. And I think it was Richard McNally at Harvard, a psychologist, he looked at the data on trigger warnings and just couldn't find any evidence that this was effective. If people are traumatized, they don't know what's going to trigger them. It's unpredictable. And one of the worst things you can do is completely insulate them from the world. That if someone's traumatized by something, you kind of gradually give them little by little exposure. You don't isolate them. The other thing that Richard McNally said is that a lot of people have traumas and don't get PTSD. There's something called post-traumatic growth. It's not always that you're disabled, psychologically shattered. People are very resilient. So what he found was that this was actually a political phenomenon. It was not anything. He could not find data that showed trigger warnings help people.
Did this researcher experience something traumatizing?
What?
Did this researcher experience a traumatic situation? Have you experienced a traumatic situation?
A tragic situation?
Traumatic, in order to know that it wouldn't bother you?
I don't have to talk about my own experience to know
that other people don't need this.
Look, whatever I've experienced, I would want to know if that, maybe it's just me, maybe this is my reaction, and maybe other people are different. So you do want to have someone to look at a representative sample of the population and see what's going on. What he could not find, he doesn't rule out trigger warnings. He just said there's no evidence that these are helping people. Now, as a professor, I never gave trigger warnings. It was before that time, and I look back, I can't imagine it. But if someone, I think it would be up to us. I think students, if you are easily triggered or something, you could tell the professor. If you see what we're going to study, you say, I'm not going to be in class that day. I of course, would understand that. I hope every professor would. But
okay,
if you have to think about everything on your syllabus, and am I going to upset someone? That's really going to undermine education.
So you should only think about some things on your syllabus.
You shouldn't. What are you saying?
You said you should think about some things, but
no, I think about teaching healthy people, and which I assume most people are. And if someone's not, they should let me know. But if I mean, look, your life is not going to come with a trigger warning. When you get out of this campus, there will not be trigger warnings. Huh? No, it's not. It's not. It's a very unsafe space.
You are in a safe space.
Don't you want safe spaces for free speech?
Safe space for reason, for debate, for open discussion, and you don't. If college change its mission from pursuing truth and it turns into protecting feelings, it will have lost its reason for being. Since the time of Socrates, the purpose of a university was for debate, exchange, and to be challenged and to be made uncomfortable.